Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming back. Tonight is actually my favorite part of the presentation series as well, where we talk about some real tips to walk through those difficult conversations. And I thank you, Glennis, for praying over having the right words, because specifically um, that verse has always meant something to me. We are promised that we will have the right words if we ask for the discernment and ask for the wisdom to know them in the right moment. And so before I get started talking about what we are going to do, I want to be very, very clear tonight about what we're not doing, what I'm not trying to do. In talking about having difficult conversations, I am not trying to bring division. I'm not trying to divide families. I'm not trying to break up friendships. I'm not trying to alienate anybody. Everything I'm teaching you tonight, everything we're going to be talking about, is to be spoken in love, in righteousness as well, when necessary, but in love, not in anger, not in frustration, not even out of fear, because we know when we have those emotions that we're not in control. Everything we're talking about tonight comes from a place of being passionate, yes, but principled. And so I just wanted to make that clear, that I'm not talking about marching out into the world and doing what the left does, which is pointing at somebody who's different than you and saying, you're wrong, and let me tell you how to be right. Because in the end, that doesn't change hearts and minds, and that just further creates and exacerbates that division that we're trying to break down. So that's what we're not trying to do. I have liberal friends, you have liberal friends, probably even some family, right? So there are times that it's not okay to discuss it, right? The left told us before Thanksgiving that we needed to spend Thanksgiving dinner talking about politics and correcting people who were wrong. And we know that that is not the right thing to do. So there are, however, opportunities that present themselves where truth needs to be defended, where truth must be defended. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. We wait for those opportunities. Sometimes we can create those opportunities, and we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight as well. So I've been so excited for 2 weeks to come back to y'all and to do this. And I kept every day changing the topics that we were going to talk about, because things are fast and furious right now coming out of DC. And I know we discussed a little bit last time that when the Democrats gain power, they tend to move very, very fast, because they know they won't have the reins very long. And so they are trying to push through as much of their progressive agenda as they can. Now, we have to understand how that works to our advantage, because ma and pa middle America, right? The average independent American voter doesn't move that fast. America doesn't move that fast. And so when conservatives take on the common sense mantle, we are the ones that come out ahead, right? When we are the ones who are able to say, defund the police, we don't defund the police, we support our blue. We also support our communities, and this is what we're going to do, for example. Or abolish ICE, no, we need to secure our border, and this is why, because we put American people first. So those are the ways that we can take on that common sense mantle, as I talk about, and win the hearts and minds of the American people. So as we get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit tonight. We're going to review the basics that we talked about last night. We're going to address how to speak out. We're going to walk through a few scenarios, which I think you will think are funny and entertaining. It may strike a little fear in your heart, because what if this happened to you? I was going to put Glennis on the spot, but she managed to be in her car and not able to be put on the spot. So I will get you next time, Glennis. But then we're going to talk about a little bit of homework and next steps. So if you were with us 2 weeks ago, we discussed the fact that the purpose of communication was simply to send and receive messages. And that's the same thing for political communication as well. We're talking about our values. We're talking about our philosophy. We're talking about more than just politics. Politics turns people off. So when we present our ideas, remember that we need to do it in the realm of values, and we need to do it in the realm of principle, because principle is universal, right? Truth is universal and incontrovertible. And politics can change, right, with the weather. And that is something that always will divide people. But truth will always bring people together. The basics of good communication are always centered around values. And values are the very baseline that you can communicate with somebody, that you can find common ground. And so anytime we walk through any of these exercises, before we point out how somebody's different, we need to take a look at how we're the same. Hey, you and I have been living in this neighborhood for 30 years. Hey, you and I have been going to the same church for 15 years now. Hey, you and I, our kids grew up together. When you begin from a place of common values, you're able to connect on a different level, and a level that actually is going to change hearts and minds. When we are effective as Republicans, as conservatives, is when we can frame our message in the terms of values. This is, again, I cannot say this enough. I spent some time 2 weeks ago discussing it, but we often fail to present our ideas in anything other than a realm that makes sense to us, right? We talk about limited government, but what does that really mean in terms of values? We talk about individual responsibility and freedom. What does that mean when we're talking about the values of faith, of family, of schooling, that kind of thing? So we need to learn to use the parameters of those values. We discussed that politics in delivering your message, definition is important. If we do not define ourselves as conservatives, which we are not always doing a very good job of, if we don't define ourselves, someone else will define us. And generally that's the media and our opponents, and that is not going to be favorable to us. We also need to remember to differentiate when we discuss our principles. What is the real loss of not having conservative governments? Well, we are seeing that every single day, and the things that are flying around in Congress, and the ideas, the radical leftist ideas that are being shared. So what makes us different from our opposition? And the last thought are the 3 building blocks of communication. We discussed all this 2 weeks ago, but shared values, connecting on that basic level. Self-interest, meaning, hey, what's in it for me, the voter, right? What is in it for my values? Emotions, as Republicans, we are the party of logic and not the party of emotion. And that's good, because logic is a good place to come from when making policy. Logic and reason is where we come from when discussing in the realm of legislating our ideas. But when we're talking to our neighbor, when we're talking to our friend, when we're talking to other groups of women, it needs to not just be in the realm of logic and reason. We need to put that emotional, empathetic frame around it, those values, and connecting on that level, so that we don't come across as being arrogant. And we're going to discuss that a little bit more coming up. And then, of course, controversy, everybody's favorite part. And this is where, if we're all in the same room, I would ask you to raise your hand if you love controversy, because there's always just one person in a whole group that raises their hand. But politics, right? I mean, that's part of it. And I dare say that after generations of being taught to not talk about religion and not talk about politics and not have those conversations, is probably arguably the reason that culture is in the mess that it's in right now. And so controversy is part of life, and we have to face it, and we can be confident about it, and we can understand that when we seek that common ground, we're going to get a lot farther. So here we go. All right, we're going to speak out. We must, as conservatives, we must engage liberals. We must engage the misinformed. And I'm going to talk a lot about that word. What are the misinformed, right? But first, why do we have to engage? Why is it important? When does evil prevail? It's when good men are silent and good women are silent. If we do not stand up for the truth, who will? Because if it's not spoken, if we don't say it, it's not going to be said. So we must engage. And we engage today in the realm of ideas. We engage today in the realm of social media, in the realm of the press, in the realm of the legislature, so that our children and grandchildren, quite frankly, don't have to engage in combat in the fields and in the streets one day. Because we understand as conservatives the real threat that Marxism, that socialism, that communism is to our republic and our way of life. And we understand as conservatives, and this is a very controversial statement for some, but we understand as conservatives that although we could vote in those policies, you have to fight your way out. So to do our part, right? We didn't start the fire, as Billy Joel might say. It's always, what is it? It's been burning as long as the world is turning. But we do have a responsibility to our kids and grandkids to hold the line right now to save the republic. And to do that, we have to engage. We also need to understand why we hesitate. Why do we not want to say these things? Why would we rather just be quiet and let other people talk about things and just know the truth, but not speak the truth? I'm going to encourage you tonight to make a plan. I'm going to encourage you to try something new. And more than anything else tonight, I want to convince you to believe in the importance of what you do. It's not just important, it is absolutely mission critical to the future. All right, so why do we hesitate? I've asked a lot of people this question, and these are some of the common answers. We like to avoid conflict, right? It's easier to get along. We certainly want to avoid conflict in a lot of situations where conflict and creating conflict wouldn't be appropriate. Again, I'm not encouraging you to divide families or to ruin Thanksgiving. I'm not, but there are moments where the opportunity presents itself to speak up. We often hesitate to speak out because we're not confident, right? But I also want you to understand when you're doing something good is when it's hard. And that I always like to share a little something from my mom. But that's what she always said, you know, when it's hard is when you're getting there, when you're doing something right. And so sometimes that's how the devil works on us, right? We're not confident. I don't know enough. I'm not really good at speaking out. I don't like speaking in public, and somebody else can do it. Well, I'm telling you right now that it's up to us, you and me and all of us in this room. Sometimes we don't speak out because it's not politically correct. It's not popular. Boy, the ladies in the PTA sure wouldn't like it. It's just bad etiquette. And sometimes we speak out because we frankly don't know the answer. Sometimes the left will overwhelm us with statistics and numbers and polls. If there's one thing you need to understand tonight, all of that flies in the face of what is genuine truths that have been around since before this world was created. Some things are true and that cannot be changed no matter what the polls said, right? As I tell my kids, God doesn't care that it is 2021. So, all right. So how are we going to get started tonight? First, we breathe, take a deep breath. We're going to look for opportunities when we go out tomorrow, when we go out the next day. Look for opportunities. We're going to listen for opportunities. Listening is much more important than talking because listening gives us the clues we need to actively and appropriately engage. And sometimes we can create those opportunities. We're going to talk more about that in our third session. But you wear that t-shirt, you wear that pin, you put that sign in your yard. How can you create those opportunities to engage? We're going to make a plan and then you're going to stick with it. Just like you develop your message and then you stay on it. Listen actively and authentically. Now, I want to stop here and remind all of you guys, I don't know who did your homework from last time, but I encouraged you to find a young person, and that wasn't your young person, but another young person, and to listen to them and to see how they approached a particular value, a particular policy or issue, and to learn from them how you might better counter that with our conservative values. So I wish I could get your feedback on that. Maybe y'all can email me that before the next session. And then of course, we want to speak steadily and calmly. We want to be passionate, but not angry. We want to remain principled because when we let our emotions get the best of us, then we know it's not our best selves. All right, flashing lights here. Remember, when someone speaks to you from a place of anger, when they ask a question and it's pointed or they come across hostile, it's likely because they care deeply about the issue and they understand, and you may not get what brought them to that place in the road that they are, why they believe that, for example, gun control is the best thing for kids in America. You may not understand that, and you may be diametrically, and likely are diametrically opposed to that. But when they speak in a hostile manner about something, it is giving you a window into their values. And if we don't have to accept it, but if we don't acknowledge that and that humanity and that passion that they have, then we're not going to come across to them in the way that we want to. We will look arrogant, we will look insensitive. We have to try to be given the benefit of the doubt. And that happens when we listen to someone else's point of view. We do not have to agree with them. You do not have to triangulate. And that is something that we're going to talk about in just a minute. All right, so our approach affects our outcome. If you've ever been a parent or a teacher, that's what you tell your kids, right? Your approach affects your outcome. And this is what happens 99 times out of 100. Someone expresses a liberal position, right? Person A says something liberal. The conservative criticizes it or they reject it. And then what happens? That liberal person is locked into that opinion, heels dug in, poles in the ground. I'm not moving because you criticized me, you rejected it. Or what if somebody criticizes your point of view? You make your statement out there and they criticize you. And what do? Well, the very human instinct is to become defensive, right? We all do it. You become defensive. Now you're both locked into that point of view. Or someone tries to force their point of view on you. Maybe it's human resources at work. Maybe it's somebody at church, but they're pushing their viewpoint on you and you push back and the cycle continues. The push here and the push there. Nothing ever changes. So I present to you tonight for something to change. Something's got to give, right? I think we could all collectively accept the fact that what is happening in our nation right now is not only unacceptable, it is unconscionable, and we have got to change it. And there's nobody better than the people in this Zoom room right now to make that happen. So we have to do the different approach. I'm going to teach you about the 3 R's. Now, this is from a book that some of you may have read. I highly recommend it. It's called Waking the Sleeping Giant. But the 3 R's are to recognize, reframe, and refocus. And that's how you have the difficult conversation. First, you recognize with whom you're dealing. My mom would be proud of that great grammar right there. You see that? Not who you're dealing with whom you're dealing. So we recognize with whom we're dealing. Secondly, we reframe what they said, because we all know when we make somebody answer a question that it makes them think, right? It makes them question their own logic. And then we refocus. We always refocus back to what we want to talk about. So now when a liberal position is expressed, when somebody criticizes your point of view, when somebody pushes their view onto you, if we recognize, we reframe, and we refocus, we have a better approach, and that gives us a better outcome. So what does it mean to recognize? All right, here we go. We want to identify with whom we are speaking. And I say this in lots of love, but there are typically 2 kinds of liberals, right? 2 kinds of progressives. There are the hardcore liberals, Nancy Pelosi, right? You are not changing her heart, and you sure aren't changing her mind. They are dug in. They are the base of the left. And I think we referenced 2 weeks ago that we pray for them, but we aren't going to spend our time trying to convert them. In fact, I believe I mentioned the biblical shake the dust off your sandals and move on to the next town. So when it's a hardcore liberal, you need to recognize what they're trying to talk about and what they're trying to get you to talk about. The best you can do, because you can't change their heart and you can't change their mind, but you can discredit their argument and expose their logic. Easy, because there's generally not a lot of logic in what they're saying. Most importantly, you can educate those around you. If it is in a group and this person is speaking all these things, right? You're not just trying to, since you can't change their heart and mind, you can actually, though, affect and educate the people around them by discrediting their logic and their arguments. There are also, what I like to say, the bless their heart liberals, right? Or well-intentioned liberals. But being from Texas, I like the bless your heart. Now, there's a lot of reasons why somebody might be a bless your heart liberal, right? Their family they've always grown up that way. They've always been told they should be that way. They watch too much of The View, right? They get they get their news from Apple News every morning, and carefully cultivated the things that you should believe and think are important. Bless their heart liberals, which means, y'all, they are good people who care about the same things that we care about. Family, faith for the most part, freedom, being able to enjoy the good things of life, making sure that people are fed and caring for the sick, and all these things that are important to us, right? These are our neighbors. These are our friends, our fellow Americans. So they just have a different way to get there, right? If we can accept that with bless their heart liberals, we all generally want the same thing. It's just a difference in opinion of how to get there. So, have they been misled by the left? Are they a knee-jerk liberal? Right? That's another way to look at it. And sometimes our young people, God love them, right? It is a knee-jerk liberality. And of course, if you're ever going to be liberal when you're very young, that's the time it's going to happen. But think about what we didn't have to deal with that they do, and the social media, and it's such an echo chamber, right? And so sometimes that's just a knee-jerk reaction. And I think I used the example last time of free college. Well, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't we want free college? That sounds great, right? Well, that's a knee-jerk liberal opinion. So what our goals are with Bless Your Heart, well-intentioned liberals, are to expose the faulty logic, right? To get them to question it, to plant that seed of doubt, and to inform. It is not to humiliate. It is not to shame or accuse, or, if you've ever been a debater and you know you're a really good debater, you know when to get after it and you know when to call off the dogs, right? Because it is never our intention in anywhere outside of a very limited realm of an actual debate to humiliate somebody. That's not what we want to do. We want to reach the hearts and the minds on that connected level. So reframing means to ask the questions, to be able to take what they said and take it out of their liberal frame and put it on our conservative frame. Here are a couple ways that we do that. First of all, on a connectivity level, on an empathetic, and I know I keep saying that, but I cannot stress how important that is for communication. We can verbally reflect them. So you're talking to me and I'm giving you verbal cues. Really? Okay. I'm reflecting what you say. I'm empathetically validating. I am really sorry that you feel that way, or I didn't know you felt that way, or I didn't know that happened to you. I'm not agreeing with what you said. I am validating the way that you feel, because they have the right to feel that way. I can also do this by acknowledging. Again, acknowledging is not accepting. Two totally different things. Acknowledging is a neutral statement. Now, I am going to invoke my wonderful friend, Tony Ann DeShiel, and I know you all know her, but Tony Ann is the master of doing this. If you've ever heard her in a big group setting, I can't do her mannerisms, but so what I think I heard you said is da 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 da, right? So she acknowledges what you just said by repeating it to make sure she got it right. What I think I heard you said. Now, my favorite is this next slide. I hear what you were saying. Now this, don't tell anybody, but this is the secret. This is the $1 million phrase right here. This is a great one with kids. It's a great one in marriage. It is a fantastic communication phrase. Wow, honey, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I don't agree with you, but I hear what you're saying. How is that important in a difficult conversation? Because I can acknowledge you. I can say, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And you would have a point, except ... But if you can write that down and commit that phrase to memory, that also diffuses their emotion, because sometimes people just get so upset, right? And they want to know that they're being heard. So tell them you hear them. I hear what you're saying. Again, it's acknowledgement without acceptance. All right, the last part of reframing is to ask questions. And our young people hate this part because we put them on the spot. And I am telling you, I'm walking the walk, because I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. And man, you do not get to express a crazy opinion in my house without backing it up. So I want you to explain your logic, right? What exactly does that mean? I haven't heard it put that way. What does that mean? Or, wow, that's really interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Again, you want to do it in a genuine manner and not a manner to shame anybody. But those kind of questions, honestly, oftentimes put that knee-jerk liberal on the defense, and you already are on a good place to jump in there to refocus with your point of view. Now, the possible results of this, what we want to happen, are exposing theological consequences. Again, logic is, not part of most of the progressive lexicon, as it were. We want to discredit and delegitimize those points of view without shaming or discrediting the person. Separate, divorce the person from the idea. We are not against people. We should not be against people. Everybody, right? Everybody is made in God's image. We have a huge, serious, flaming problem with the ideology, but not that person. So we want to discredit and delegitimize the idea and the philosophy. And we really honestly want to educate others. What does the left really believe? What does the left really support? And thankfully, the left is, as I said before, doing a really good job right now of exposing themselves because they're moving so quickly. All right, so we want to refocus. What issue do you want to talk about? Next week, when we do media training, this is one of the biggest things I will tell you. It doesn't matter what the question is, you answer it the exact same with your talking point. What issue do you want to talk about? How do we know that? Because we're going to prepare in advance. We're going to have our facts, we're going to have our talking points, we're going to understand our principles so that we can refocus it. Now, here are the phrases, and this is all going to be recorded, and I can email it to you, so I don't want you to take time to write it down. But these are the very important phrases that you can practice to use when you meet with objections. All right, first of all, communicating with them on a personal level. You know, I came to understand a long time ago, or honestly, it was just recently. Susan, I used to feel exactly the way you did. And then I spent time looking into the issue. I went down to the border. I did this, I did that. And I talked to somebody and I realized that that wasn't the case at all. I realized this, right? So that personal understanding, yeah, Susan, I understand. I felt the same way. I came to the realization that you can also say, I recognize why some people object to this. I understand why some people feel that way. But in truth, this. And that way you're saying, yeah, I mean, I hear you. I understand why somebody might feel that way. But when we think it out, when we take it to its natural conclusion, when we look at it from a historical point of view, that system of government has never worked and has only ever brought misery. And this is why, right? We can use that. The second part is to identifying flaws in their objection. Well, those who believe that really aren't taking into consideration the whole picture. Again, I come back to socialism. I mean, it's just such an easy target. That's why I'm picking on it all the time. The generation today that's promoting socialism has no understanding of the history of it. They have no understanding of the reality of it. And they need to speak with people who have come across and immigrated from socialist, et cetera. Now, this next one is really important because, again, what would you do if somebody pointed at you and said, you're wrong? Maybe that happens in your house, right? But we get defensive. We automatically get defensive. And if we stand up and yell at somebody and point our finger in their face, they're going to get defensive too. So take it away from them personally. Put it on the issue. Put it on other people. And see how I have the word they in quotation marks. So your friend is talking about, well, we need to raise taxes on the rich, right? So, they said that raising taxes would help, but, all we've seen is unemployment on the rise and prices up and, et cetera, et cetera. So you're taking it away from your disagreement with them and you're putting it on these other people who have the exact same opinion, but it's them, it's not her. And then of course we want to offer a solution. We want to offer a solution. We want to offer a solution. If we are the party of anything but Biden, if we are the party of anything but liberals, anything but progressives, right? Then we're nobody. We're nothing. We can't be against things all the time. We cannot live in a state of perpetual outrage. And that is such the human reaction to do because there are things that are so outrageous every single day. It just beats us down. But if we don't have the solution right now, we are against, for example, the plans, right? The innocuous sounding plans coming out of the Biden administration, the American Family Plan and the this plan and that plan. Well, take it back to Obamacare. Well, we're against Obamacare. Well, what are you for? I don't know. You see what I'm saying? A plan in the minds of some people is better than no plan. So offer a solution. We need to be right there as Republicans with the answer, the common sense, take that ground back solution to the policing issue. right? Well, we're not against defunding the police. What are we for? We got to have a plan. And we always frame that plan in our values. Let's have some fun. Let's do some scenarios. All right. So I talked to you last time about some progressive values. I did a little research. It was frightening, but you're welcome. I saved you from going out and having to do it. These are some values that they describe themselves as having. Empathy. Who's against empathy, right? We talk a lot about that. Fairness. Fairness. That's one of those words. How do you define that? How do you logically put fairness? Again, they're not worried about the logic because they're appealing to the emotion. Equality, equity. Equity is the word that is being thrown around right now, and it is a code word for, in short, a advancement of super progressive and Marxist principles. Equity means cutting off everybody's legs, right? It's not equality, trying to make sure everybody can stand and see. Equity is cutting off everybody's legs so that everyone shares in the equal misery. Freedom. Who's against freedom? We're all about freedom. The common good. Choice, which, as I've argued before, Republicans, conservatives are the party of choice, right? Because we want to create an equal playing field where people can choose whatever they want to choose and have the economic ability and economic freedom and opportunity to do that. So these are progressive values. These were some of the issues that we talked about that I asked you to speak to young people about. DC statehood. Hero pay, which was a code for raising federal minimum wage on certain jobs. And no, not first responders. They were talking about grocery store and pharmacy workers is who they were defining with hero. There's no border crisis. Living in South Texas, that's one of my personal favorites. And of course, tax the rich. So how do we address these values or these policies, these talking points of the left? How do we address them in terms of our conservative values? Self-reliance. What does that mean? Limited government, personal responsibility, right? These are words and they mean so much to us, but how do we convey them in a more empathetic frame? So this is what I want to present you with tonight. Here we go. We're in a car, right? We're all in a car and we're going to a women's retreat. So say we're with a bunch of ladies from church, maybe not our best friends, but some people that we know fairly well, or we know who they are. They're not strangers. News is on the radio, right? They're listening to MSNBC or whatever on the radio. And the news anchor is talking about the new tax hikes. And if you guys have been paying attention, well, I guess we should say we should all be glad because he said no one under 400,000 was paying taxes. I think they probably corrected that in the transcript, but anyway, so, but it's the whole tax the rich thing, right? So they're talking about the new tax hikes. And then one lady in the car offhandedly says, yeah, it's time. I think that's right. They were talking the other day about the wealthiest Americans should pay their fair share, and that will get us equity. And if the wealthiest pay their fair share, then, then everything will be better. And it's about time because income inequality is plaguing this nation. What are you going to do? Do you let it go? Do you say something? You're in a car, you're 45 minutes from the retreat center. What do? Do you let them talk or do you stand up and you say something? All right, so let's go through together the 3 R's. Step 1, recognize. This is Susan. All right, I'm sorry for any Susans who are on the call. I'm just picking a name, right? Step 1, is she a hardcore liberal? Is she a bless your heart liberal, right? Is she even liberal at all? Is she just parroting what she heard on The View that day or what was on Apple News, or just frankly trying to make conversation? And she kind of misguidedly thought that would be a good conversation breaker. So I would ask you guys to answer, but I know you're all on mute. So obviously this is not a hardcore liberal. Most likely she's well-intentioned. She's just kind of knee-jerk about it. So our goal isn't to shame her or accuse her, but our goal is to expose the faulty logic because there's other people in the car, right? And we want to educate them as well and to inform her. So the second R is to reframe. Let's ask her a question. What are some examples of questions that we could ask Susan when she says that? Okay, what does fair share mean? Because I've always wondered that. I've heard people talking about that, but what does fair share mean? I mean, who gets to decide what's fair? I mean, is it the government? Because that doesn't seem right. You're making her think, well, who decides what's fair? Now, granted, I understand. Look, I get it. There's so many things wrong with the statement that she said, but you've got to start somewhere, right? And you can't just pile on. So pick one spot and jump in there. Or you could say something like, well, that's interesting. I've never really thought about that way. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. Okay. So those are questions, and 9 times out of 10. Now, my favorite one, y'all, and I know we're so far past this, but I'm sure you remember, it was so easy, so easy. Remember when Wendy Davis ran against Governor Abbott? When I'm blanking on what year that was, it kind of just runs together right now, but remember, and she stood there in the pink shoes, and the whole thing, their whole talking point for the whole campaign was, I stand with Wendy. All you had to do when somebody said that was, what did Wendy stand for exactly? Right? And it just melted because they didn't even know. All they knew was they had been brainwashed about standing up in pink tennis shoes and making a stand. And yeah, well, tell me about that. What exactly did she stand for? Of course, we knew that what she was standing for was abortion after 5 months, which the vast majority of Texans think is abhorrent. But if you could get somebody to that point to be able to tell them that, then you've won your argument. Step 1, recognize. Step 2, reframe. Now we want to refocus. All right. We want to refocus Susan on what we want to talk about. Here are a couple examples. Okay. Well, yeah, but what really bothers me with what is happening right now is the suffering. I mean, businesses are closing. We had this restaurant in my town that closed the other day. Businesses are closing, and there's all this regulation. And if they raise taxes on some people, those prices get passed on to other people, right? Or the businesses. So what does that do to the families who are already struggling? I am empathetically, genuinely, I'm not lying, I'm genuinely worried about the families, but she doesn't see it from that perspective. Same thing when people talk about shutting down the mines, green energy. Yeah, well, we're going to shut down coal plants tomorrow. Do they have any idea what that would do to struggling families, not just throughout the Northeast, but people all across America? I mean, the price of energy. So you've got this struggling mom trying to feed her kids, and now you're going to raise her energy bill by quadrupling it? No, but they don't think about that. And Republicans rarely take that opportunity to make that empathetic connection. Raising taxes, eat the rich, raise taxes on the rich. Really? Well, let's talk about what that does, because when you raise taxes on one group, it's going to trickle down and come back, right? Because you raise taxes on a business, or you make them have $15 an hour minimum wage, they're going to fire people. They're going to automate, or they're going to raise their prices. All of those affect the yous and me's, and the people even less blessed than the yous and me's, right? It always comes down. The rich are always going to be rich, and everybody else is going to be affected by that attitude. So we want to refocus it, right? Here's another one. I hear you, but to be honest, from my understanding and all that I've learned, I mean, I only took one economics class, but so be humble about it, right? Wealth actually creates wealth. I mean, if I do better, then I'm able to support businesses, and they do better, and everybody does better. I mean, making rich people less rich doesn't make poor people rich. It just hurts the whole economy. Did I ever tell you the story about my mom? My mom worked for Rolex, and we didn't have anything, but she worked for Rolex. And because some people had the money to buy Rolexes, I got to go to college. That's a true story, by the way. But that personal connection, right, helps people understand where you got where you are. All right, second scenario, you're in the grocery store. All right, you are in the grocery store. Maybe it's campaign season. Maybe you have a t-shirt on. Maybe you have your pin on. You're waiting in a line. There's always that person that puts 20 things in line on the 12 things and under. You know what I'm talking about, right? So you're waiting in this line, and this lady is reading the newspaper that's sitting right there, and she suddenly says, border crisis. What border crisis? No border crisis. What a bunch of lies. The Republicans, I'm so sick of it. The Republicans just hate immigrants. They're so racist. They just hate immigrants. What you gonna do? Are you going to smile at her? You've got your mask on, right? Likely still in the grocery store. So you're going to hide? You're going to not say anything? You're going to stand up for the truth. All right. So is Miss Press, is she a hardcore liberal? Is she a bless your heart liberal? Is she even liberal at all? She's making conversation. Maybe she's testing you. I don't know. We don't know. We can't put everybody in a box. So what we want to try to do is just expose those faulty assumptions, right? And discredit her talking point. Republicans don't hate anybody, right? But that's the convenient talking point. So we want to reframe it, acknowledge her. But we want to ask that clarifying question that's going to make her think and put her on her toes. Really? I honestly have quite a few Republican friends. You can admit to being one or not, totally up to you. I have quite a few Republican friends, and I've never actually met somebody who felt that way. What makes you say that? Or, funny you should say that, because I just heard today on the news, Congressman Cuellar, do you know him? He's a Democrat out of South Texas. And he was on the news talking about how something needs to be done at the border, exposing the propaganda that's going on about those facilities. Did you catch that? Then you've got her. Then you refocus it. What do you want to talk about? I want to talk about the fact that there's a border crisis and that there are legitimately children that are being trafficked in this nation and nobody's doing anything about it, let alone the fact that counties like mine and all across South Texas are having their property stolen, their ranches broken into, their fences climbed, their family threatened by this crisis. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. So how do I get her from Republicans hate immigrants to, yes, there is a border crisis? Refocus, breathe. I hear you that there's so much confusion about what is going on at the border right now, and who do we believe? Because one, the media tells us this and it tells us that, but at the bottom line, what needs to happen is those kids. Who's looking out for those kids in those facilities? And then you go from there to talk about the fact that it is a crisis, human trafficking, etc., right? Or, oh wow, or just act like you just didn't even hear what she said and just change the channel, right? Oh, wow, I'm from Live Oak County. We had another bailout yesterday. That's one bailout every day for the last 3 weeks, which also is true. And something's got to be done. So again, we take that and we refocus it to talk about the issue that we want to talk about. Now you're in the grocery store, right? You need your chicken broth because you forgot your chicken broth, and you're standing there with your chicken broth and your wine to go with it. And you just want to get out of there, but there's that opportunity. Look, we want opportunities. We sometimes pray for opportunities to speak out and to defend the truth. We don't always get to choose when those opportunities come. So here's your opportunity, right? All right, we're going to skip a scenario 3, and I'm going to take you to the conclusion because we're running out of time a little bit. I'm going to talk to you from the heart and not my PowerPoint right now. If somebody came up to you, if you were a person of faith and somebody came up to you and they said, I'm struggling with my faith, right? I don't know that I believe right now. I don't know. I don't know that God is here. I don't know that he's present. Why do these bad things happen? I don't know. I'm really struggling and I don't have any answers. Every one of you would stop what you were doing. If you're a person of faith, you would stop what you were doing and you would look them in the eye and you would speak from your heart. You would speak from your journey, from the steps that you've taken. You would speak from the mind and the scripture that you've lodged there over all your years, but you would speak to them authentically and in a manner that would reach from you to them, right? From the Christ that's in you to the Christ that's in them, and make that connection. So we would do that for faith. And obviously our faith transcends everything, right? It transcends everything. But I'm going to argue with you tonight, that what you and I are talking about is not politics. Because if it were just politics, red and blue and yay, my team's winning and my team is losing, but next time it'll go back and forth and it doesn't really matter, right? Politics is of this earth. What we're talking about is principle. And I brought this up in the beginning and I wanted to bring it back to it tonight. We're talking about truth and principle and what is real. And when we learn to transcend politics and take it from a position of principle, it becomes a lot easier to defend. It becomes a lot easier to speak about because it's from here. So speak to somebody. When they ask you what you think, tell them, but tell them from here. Tell them from your heart. Tell them from your journey, from the steps that you've taken to get where you are, from what you know, right? All the truth that you've seen in your life, the wisdom that other people have imparted, talk to them from that place, just like you would if you were witnessing. Because when talking about people, talking about principle, witnessing is really what we're doing, right? I mean, earlier tonight, Eric and I were talking about the fact that if we really pursue the conservative principles, right? Because freedom gives us freedom to speak out. It gives us freedom to worship. It gives us freedom to do with our families what we believe is right. And that is kingdom work. So speak about principle and it will be easier to speak. We have to accept that a messaging war is being waged on every front. And as the Bible tells us, right, we're not fighting principalities and things of this earth. It is deeper than that. And when truth and logic are irrelevant to one side of the debate, that makes it really hard for somebody like me who's so type A. How do you even fight that? Well, that's what we've worked on tonight. Our biggest threat right now to one of our biggest threats to our Republican, certainly the biggest threat to our culture, is that idea of moral relativism. And we talked about that last time, but the view that right and wrong isn't absolute, that there really is no truth. It's 2021, so it's kind of subject to whatever I say it is or whatever popular culture deems it is. And we know that mainstream media obviously furthers the cause of the left. That's no big surprise. So what can you do? I get this question more often than anything else. You take the time to speak to people. And by speaking, I mean listening in equal parts and speaking empathetically. Ask them what issues are important to them. Reframe it, refocus it, to explain, to show, to connect on why conservative governments, right? I mean, real, principled, not just Republican Party stuff, which sometimes can go back and forth depending on whoever may be in office, but conservative principles will get us to the place that we want to be. We'll get them to their goals, right? To the things that are important to them. And ultimately, it's why we're going to save the Republic. All right. So we ask what's important to them. We think, how have they gotten to that conclusion? Why are you liberal? I mean, I know, right? Isn't that ultimate question? But why? But if we really try to understand that about somebody, it helps us connect to them better. And then when is the best time to try to continue that conversation? All right. Last thing I want to share with you. What can you do? What should be your goal, right? Can you convert every person you talk to into being a conservative? You're better than me. Is your goal to win every argument? Listen to me. I'm not talking about marriage, y'all, because sometimes that goal is to win every argument. I'm talking about empathizing with people on a policy, on a principle level. Should our goal be to win every argument? No. What you can do, what you should do, what we must do is be an ambassador for our principles. What do I mean by that? An ambassador? Well, just as if you got up in church and preached a sermon, but then cut people off in the parking lot on the way to the chicken place, you're not really walking the walk. So walk the walk. Be an ambassador for our principles. Our goal is to plant the seeds of truth. Just plant the seed. You don't have to win the argument. Once upon a time, I had to teach kindergarten Sunday school. I'm not a teacher. And I was so worried that, I was directly responsible for the faith formation of these kids. And if I didn't get this across, they were never going to be saved, and the pressure. And so finally, this lady took me aside and said, you're just planting the seeds, right? And it was this light bulb. Oh, okay, I can do that. Well, here's my light bulb to you. You're just planting the seeds. Don't try to win every argument. Just plant the seeds of truth. And also, you see over in that corner, I kind of have a little bit crooked. Sometimes you're planting the seeds of doubt, right? Maybe in a young person who is expressing the Apple News talking point of the day. Sorry, I'm picking on Apple News, not sorry. But you're planting doubt in the misguided messages that they receive. And this is my one quote. I'll always leave you with a quote. This is one of my very favorites, attributed to St. Francis. Preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. So if we change that to suit our purposes tonight, speak the truth always, stand for your principles always, and when necessary, use words. Because if we walk the walk, then we're going to connect on the hearts and minds and make a difference to save our republic. Here's your homework, because you know I was going to give you homework. Let's go back to the basics. I want you to find somebody, maybe your husband or a friend, maybe not somebody liberal. This time I want you to go to somebody who's on our side, right? We're going to do some iron sharpens iron perspective. And I'm sorry, I know I'm running out of time. But I want you to talk with somebody this week about one of these things. What's Marxism? What is socialism? Why is it bad? I know it's bad. I mean, I know it is. I haven't read my history in a long time. I need to remind myself exactly why it's bad. Go back to the historical perspective, because history always repeats itself. The Bible tells us there's nothing new under the sun, right? History always comes back and repeats itself. So take some time and pick that. Or what about the truth about the 1%? All right, well, let's talk about the 1%. Guess what? The wealthy, the elite are always going to be elite. You think, that's so funny. You think that equity applies to Nancy Pelosi? That's hysterical. Yeah, no. Look at what they've done. Look at every mayor of every large liberal city that there is in America, all those COVID regulations that they passed. Oh, heck no. They were all caught, right? With their masks off or on a trip or whatever it was, right? The rules don't apply to them. Talk about that and think about how you would message that to, say, a young person, right? Well, guess what? When you talk about taxing the rich, they're always going to be rich, right? So they will find a way, or a corporation, right? They will find a way to pass it back to the people. It always happens that way. What about criminals? Guess what? The definition of a criminal is someone who doesn't abide by the law. So passing more laws on things that restrict the freedoms of average, everyday law-abiding Americans like you and me isn't going to affect whether or not a criminal does it, right? And of course, by that, that's a great topic, great talking point when we're talking about the Second Amendment. Or just in general, kids, if we surrender it to the government, we ain't getting it back. So take one of those and just talk it out, kind of do a brain dump on paper and talk about, do some iron sharpens iron, how to message those points and share that with somebody on a values-based level. All right, I'm also sending you to a website. This is so cool. It is called whatwouldyousay.org. Whatwouldyousay.org. I love it. I wished I had thought of it. I didn't. It's not mine, but this is not an endorsement. I've not watched every video that they did. I'm not saying I agree with everything, but if you scroll down, go to their video section and scroll down, so they've got one on, should we try to erase economic inequality? That's a good question. It's a 5-minute video where they present how to argue each one of those points, pro-life in 60 seconds. Look at the one in the bottom. I don't like any of them. I'm not voting. My vote won't make a difference. Can you talking point that? Can you elevator speech that right now to somebody who says that? So I highly recommend you check out some of their videos. Again, don't come back to me and tell me something was awful on there. I've not watched everything, but in general, it's a great concept. Okay. So I want you to then work on that question. Why should I bother to vote? It's too late. It's too late to save the republic. Is it? If I thought it was, I wouldn't be here. How do you answer somebody who says that? The Electoral College. Oh, that is so weedy, but it is so important. Why should we have the Electoral College anyway? Or go to one of those issues that the young person you talked to this week gave you. So that's your homework. Be the change. Let's save the republic. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My email is there. I welcome any questions that you have. I'd love to hear the results of some of your conversations. And in a week, we're going to be talking about not just the media, because I know that that doesn't apply to everybody, but we're going to be also talking about next steps and how we can actually take positive actions beyond just hoping and waiting and causing opportunities for conversations, some real steps that we can take about forming groups and studying to make a difference, to move on and save our republic. So does anybody have any questions now, or did you want to do that? I'm sorry, I'm running late.
Yep,
I get so into it. I talk too long.
No, you're fine. That was so great. It was lots of good information. I so enjoyed it. If anybody has any questions, if you want to type it into the chat, or I mean, I could also, if you raise your hand, I could unmute you, if you know how to do that, and you could ask her directly. Let me see. Let me find Sue here. Sue should be up at the top now. There you are. Okay, I'm gonna ask to unmute you, and you can ask her your question.
Okay. Hey, Amy, I've been watching hours upon hours upon hours of the Texas legislature. And I have a question because I'm going to be in the same position as these conservative legislatures. And it was getting really nasty right before this started with poor Kane. But do you really recommend with the hardcores that you just diffuse it and just answer like, oh, well, I don't know that? Or at what point do you dig in? Because if they're hardcore and they're coming at you with the I got you, I'm trying to get you, and rearrange your words against you, how is the best way to do that without, getting in a quagmire?
Right. Well, I mean, I think if it's just you and them, it's different. But if it's in a group of people where other people can see you standing up for the truth, right, and you can diffuse them and cast doubt into what they're saying and educate those around you. Besides, it's just, I mean, yeah, stand up for the truth. But I think there are ways that you don't have to, you can go toe to toe without getting in the mud. And that, again, wisdom from mom, and you just feel like a whole book about it, but she always, you don't have to play in their mud puddle. And so that is another way that Republicans, that conservatives can take that high ground by not going low, but by saying to the point. And this is something I'll give you guys in the media training, but Bob, that is not what Texans care about. That is not the issue that is important to Texans. Texans want to see real reform. Texans want to see no, state income tax. They want to see no taxpayer funded lobbying, whatever it is that you're going on, just stop them right there in their tracks and say, that that's not important to Texans, or that that's not really the issue we're dealing with here, or that you're not speaking the whole truth on that. You know it, I know it, these people know it. This is the whole truth, and da 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 da. If they get ugly,
Well, that's when they start calling you a racist or a Nazi.
Yeah, I mean, you've already won. You're just, bless you, and right. I mean, you don't have to put up with that. You don't have to go toe to toe with that. But if they get ugly or call you names in front of a group of people, you've already won, right? I mean, if you can maintain that high ground and be respectful and say, you know what, Bob, I would love to, and I'm not referring to any specific legislator named Bob.
Yeah.
Let me be clear. I just pick names and I get in trouble, right? But, Bob, if you want to have this conversation later where we can actually talk, I'm open for it any day. You know where my office is. So, you don't have to engage, and they just make themselves look bad. But
okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm just seeing that with regular people now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm on here now. Hi, Amy. Leslie Fitzpatrick. Can you hear me? But I can't hear you. You're muted now.
Oh, sorry. I was muted, and oh, no, wait. No, I muted Amy. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry.
No, thank you.
My family probably wishes they had that button.
So Amy, I've absolutely loved this presentation. And what my biggest takeaway tonight is being able to separate the person from the message. And I think as Republicans, we get the person and their belief system mushed in together. And so we end up attacking the person because of the idea that they hold, which then shuts the person down, and we lose any ability to communicate the truth. And so how can we as Republican women leaders teach our party how to be better communicators and not attack the person so much as to attack the issues? Because that's where, I mean, the media just has a field day with Republicans because we are calling out the person because of the ideals that they hold and not actually addressing that incorrect mindset.
Right, right. And we do it all out in front of everybody for the whole world to see. Yeah, no, I agree. And Leslie, it's good to see you. I think first and foremost, the most important thing that we can do as Republican women is to lead by example. I think secondly, we hold each other accountable and we be the ones that start the change, right? We be the ones that take the high ground when, not y'all, because I know it's not y'all, but when people use words like demon rats or libtards, which is, I mean, just, you know, the cringe worthy things that people call people, that people on our side call people on the other side, right? I mean, you've lost all credibility, but you've also lost any chance of changing somebody's mind. And again, I go back to, you know, if we are people of faith, then that brings a whole nother principle into it, right? Because I can't just write you off as a demon rat or whatever they say, right? I have to see you as a fellow child of God, which means I've got to love you. That's part of the deal, right? That's one of the most important commandments. So I think that we lead by example. I think that we hold each other accountable. I think that we do a lot of training about social media and how to use social media for the powers of good and establish ourselves as people who are to be trusted. I know that if done right, you can position yourself with other friends who aren't very political as, oh gosh, it's election day and I didn't look anything up. Will you tell me who to vote for? I mean, I know if I asked you guys to raise your hands, how many of you have had somebody say that to you, right? Well, but you have to be that person of good, yeah, right? So you have to be that person of good character, though, to be that person for somebody. So we build ourselves up. We're careful about what we share. We're even more careful about the back and forth commenting on social media. I should have had a slide about the fact that you will never, ever change someone's heart or their mind in the comments on Facebook ever, period. So just don't try. But I think that those are real ways. And again, we can get deeper into this. And thank you for that question. I'll address this more next week. But those are some real ways to lead by example. But walking that walk is just the most important thing.
Thank you.
And it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's not. We are in a quagmire, and it's going to take a little while to get ourselves out. But I think that, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that's part of my daily prayer. You know, just show me the way, show me what I can do.
And I'm kind of like you. I'm tired of it. It's just gone on so long, and I'm just ready for it to end. And I'm willing to extend an olive branch to help, you know, mitigate and neutralize. That's kind of where I'm at on the whole deal.
Right. Which isn't the same as triangulating or capitulating. Mm-hmm. Right. And we need to quit saying as conservatives, by acknowledging is not capitulating, right? By trying to work with somebody is not sacrificing our principles. If you and I agree on this issue, disagree on this issue, well, you know what, I can work with you on this issue because I want to forward this too. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to preach, but to answer your question, I think that is a very good place to start. By acknowledging someone else having an opinion is not accepting that opinion or sacrificing your own principle. So
thank you.
Great. I think that's it. So good deal.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Great.
Lori.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.